Hi everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the latest Hurricane Tracker app video update recorded Friday, September the 8th, 2017 at 9 p.m. Eastern. Well, we're going to try to keep this as brief as possible, but we have a lot to talk about in the tropics, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Of course, the majority of today's video is going to be on Major Hurricane Irma and the impending impacts to the United States. We do have another hurricane, a Category 2 storm, here in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico, and it's going to bring dangerous wind and dangerous storm surge to the state of Veracruz during the next several hours. And finally, we have Major Hurricane Jose, Category 4 storm just like Irma, here east of the Lesser Antilles. And in just a moment, we'll take a look at the watches and warnings associated with Jose. But we are in the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season. It's very unusual to have 3 hurricanes ongoing at once in the Atlantic. So, and of course, we just had Harvey about 10 days ago. So it's been very busy. And we believe after Irma, Jose, and Kasha, things should slow down for a couple of weeks. And then we could see the activity pick back up. All right, Hurricane Jose is a Category 4 storm with 150 mile-per-hour winds. It's located 305 miles east-southeast of the northern Leeward Islands. It's moving to the west-northwest at 17, and the pressure is at 938 millibars. Unfortunately, our friends in the islands were just devastated by Hurricane Irma as it moved through a few days ago. For example, the island of Barbuda is now under a hurricane warning once again, and Anguilla, St. Martin. We have a hurricane watch in effect for Antigua. We have tropical storm warnings also in effect for Antigua, St. Eustatius, Saba, and tropical storm watches out here in portions of the British Virgin Islands. So lots going on. We're going to see impacts, unfortunately, from Jose here in the northeastern Caribbean this weekend. Then once we get beyond this weekend, Jose should move towards the northwest and then out into the open Atlantic. Some models have been showing it looping around here south of Bermuda. But right now, we don't think it's going to come westward and affect the United States or the Bahamas at this time. But Bermuda may want to keep an eye on this storm in case it is able to gain a little bit more latitude. All right, Major Hurricane Irma. Let's take a look at the latest with the storm. You can see the last few frames, there's some brighter colors indicating some colder cloud tops that Irma may be trying to strengthen just a little bit. It does appear to be headed west towards the coast of Cuba as some models had forecasted. That would be a little bit of good news. We're going to watch overnight and in the morning to see as Irma moves over, the circulation moves over the northern coast of Cuba, if it can help weaken this storm a little bit. But once it moves through Cuba and past Cuba and into the Florida Straits, the National Hurricane Center is forecasting it to re-strengthen back to a Category 5 storm and is forecasting winds to be around 150 miles per hour before landfall on the Florida Keys on Sunday. All right, so with Harvey, Irma, and Jose, they all reached Category 4 or higher status, and this is the first time on record 3 consecutive Atlantic named storms have reached Category 4. So quite a milestone, and it just really shows how remarkable this period is that we have been in. So the latest on Irma, it's located 315 miles southeast of Miami. Maximum sustained winds are 155 miles per hour. It's moving to the west at 12, and pressure's down to 924 millibars. And if you haven't heard, officials have asked about 5.6 million residents in Florida to evacuate. And this is the biggest evacuation now in United States history. I believe it surpassed the evacuation of Hurricane Rita back in 2005, based on what I was reading. So definitely a serious storm. We still have hurricane warnings in effect here throughout the Bahamas, the northern coast of Cuba, and then we have hurricane warnings in effect for the southern half of the Florida Peninsula, along with the Florida Keys. And then north of the hurricane warnings, we do have hurricane watches in effect along the west and east coast of Florida. And we do expect that over time, these watches and warnings will be expanded to the north and east into the Georgia coast, as well as a portion of the South Carolina coastline as well. And here's a closer look at the watches and warnings. I'm going to read through some of them now. We have hurricane warning in effect for Sebastian Inlet southward around the Florida Peninsula to Anna Maria Island. That includes the Florida Keys, Lake Okeechobee, Florida Bay. We have a hurricane watch in effect north of Sebastian Inlet to Flagler, Volusia County line, and then north of Anna Maria Island to the Swanee River. And of course, we also have some storm surge watches and warnings in effect for the southern portions of the Florida Peninsula, and we'll take a closer look at those in just a moment. The latest computer models, let's look at the ensemble. We have 51 members for the European model suite, 21 or so for the GFS. Throughout the last couple runs, they have shifted a little more to the west towards the west coast of Florida, and that would be a little bit better news for the Miami area here. While you're still going to receive tropical storm force winds, I mean, this is a little bit better trend for the Miami metro, but it is a definitely a horrible trend for southwest Florida as storm surge is forecasted to be up to 12 feet in southwest Florida. And we're going to see some major impacts, especially near where that center comes in on Sunday morning. So we're going to go through some of the impacts with Irma. The first one's going to be rain impacts. Anywhere you see the red coloring, you could see up to 10 inches of rain. The purple color here, the lighter purple, is up to 15 inches. The darker purple is up to 20 inches. We could see some of that extending up here into the Florida Keys and southern Florida. The yellow areas could receive rainfall 4 to 6 inches, and then 1 to 3, 4 inches or so in the green area. So you can see it's going to be a lot of rain falling. We could see up to 15, 20 inches in some isolated areas, and that will definitely lead to some flash flooding problems, unfortunately. So storm surge, southwest Florida, from Captiva to Cape Sable, 8 to 12 feet. And then again, that is 12 feet above sea level. So the biggest cause of death in hurricanes is storm surge. You know, I just can't say it enough how dangerous storm surge is. And a lot of these areas along the coast have been ordered to evacuate. And if anybody is left along the immediate coast in these pink shaded areas, you are putting your life in danger. Okay, storm surge is the biggest reason for the loss of life in storms, and we hope that everyone in this area is taking this very, very seriously, especially in the Florida Keys. We can see the Florida Keys underwater, or portions of the Keys underwater. There's going to be no place on the Keys that's going to be safe during this storm. And again, this is a storm like we haven't seen in a long, long time. Here's a look at the current wind field for Irma. You can see it's quite expansive. The wind field expands out some 200 miles or so from the center. And if you look at the latest forecasted wind band, anywhere in the red area could see winds 75 to 100 plus miles per hour. Down here in southwest Florida and the Florida Keys, you're more likely to see, especially close to the center, winds reaching 130, 140. So definitely catastrophic winds will likely occur across the Florida Keys and southwest Florida, and that is just going to be moving up northward through the Florida Peninsula. The blue kind of teal area, still very strong winds, 58 to 74 miles per hour with gusts, into the 90s possibly. And then in the yellow areas, you can see tropical storm force winds 39 to 57 with gusts to 70 or 80. And that's more likely to the east of the center here throughout eastern Florida. And here's a look at the forecasted wind swath from this afternoon's European model. Anything you see shaded here in the brown area, by the way, this is the peak wind gust map. You can see wind gust here over 74 knots, so 80 miles per hour or so. And then the kind of lighter pink areas will be up in the 90s. And then, gusts well into the hundreds, as we just stated, down here in parts of southwest Florida. And then early next week, we could see these gusts extending up into Georgia, parts of the southeast, South Carolina. We're based in Atlanta, and we're being told we could see wind gusts 40 to 60, maybe even 70 miles per hour on the south side of town and closer into central Georgia. So inland areas of the southeast, prepare for power outages because trees will be knocked over. Make sure you're stocking up on water, non-perishables, as we could see electricity also be out for hundreds of thousands, if not a few million people here across the southeast. Almost a certainty we're going to see major impacts as far as power outage here through the Florida Peninsula. Millions and millions of people, unfortunately, will lose power, and some could be without power for several days or even up to a week or two. A lot of you have been asking us, what is the wind impact looking like in my area? We're going to give you kind of an overview, some idea of some peak wind speed gusts from the European model, and then we'll show you how to get your specific forecast directly from the National Weather Service. So this is valid on Sunday afternoon as the storm is moving into southern Florida. These are peak wind gusts this is raw model output off the European. While it's a highly regarded model, your actual conditions could be a few miles per hour lower or higher than this. This is just to give you a general idea of the size and scope of this storm as it moves up into Florida. So the European model as of this afternoon is showing wind gusts here in southeast Florida, generally in the upper 90s, low 100s. Down here in the Florida Keys, 120, I even see a 154 printed there. And then here southwest Florida, 120, 130. Let's move on up into central Florida. We've got Tampa here, St. Petersburg. We've got the Orlando area. Could easily see winds gusting into the mid to upper 90s, possibly even a couple of hundreds. And again, the closer you are to the center, the higher the wind gusts will be. But definitely everybody here in these red shaded areas are going to experience wind gusts well over hurricane force. Then as we get into Monday afternoon up here into South Georgia, northern Florida, the Jacksonville area, wind gusts around 90, 95 as well, and even up here into southern Georgia. Irma is one of those storms. It's so powerful. It's so large. It's going to take a while to spin down. It's not like it's going to move over Florida and then dramatically weaken. It's not going to really dramatically weaken here till it gets up into the interior portions of the southeast. This is the forecasted peak wind gust here in northern Georgia where we live. And the Atlanta metro region is located about right here. And the European is saying we could get wind gusts into the upper 60s to lower 70s approaching hurricane force. And definitely sustained winds here in the northern and central and southern parts of Georgia well into tropical storm force. So we're going to see impacts all the way from the Florida Keys into northern Georgia, upstate South Carolina, western North Carolina. Again, this is going to be a very high impact storm. And the best way to get your local weather, the exact conditions from your Weather Service office, go to weather.gov, put in your zip code in here, and hit go, and it will show you the exact watches and warnings that have been issued for your zip code. You can click on any of the watches or warnings to get specifics, and believe me, the Weather Service will give you all the details about what to expect right there in your local zip code. Not enough people use weather.gov. It's a very valuable resource. The National Weather Service does a phenomenal job in coordinating with the National Hurricane Center and getting you the latest, most accurate information for your area so you can make the best decisions for yourself, your property, and your family. Finally, if you have the Hurricane Tracker app on the Irma storm page, you can click on NWS Forecast to load up a mobile version of this. Put in your zip code. You can get this information right within the Hurricane Tracker app. And also important, read the public advisory from the National Hurricane Center. That'll give you all the latest watches and warnings, all the latest stats on Irma as it's making landfall. And you can also read the National Hurricane Center analysis as well. So we cannot say enough how dangerous Irma is. It's going to rival Andrew, Charlie, and even Wilma. This is a very powerful storm. It's already proven to be catastrophic and deadly throughout the Caribbean. And take the storm seriously if you're in its path. You still have, first half of the day tomorrow in South Florida to rush those preparations to final completion or get out of the area if you feel that you're not going to be safe where you're at through the duration of this storm. We'll be here at the Hurricane Tracker app to keep you updated. And tropical storm force winds are expected to move into the Florida Keys and South Florida as early as tomorrow afternoon. And once the tropical storm force winds start, it's going to be then too late to finish your preparations, as conditions will only deteriorate from there. Thank you for using the Hurricane Tracker app. If you don't have it and you want to track Irma, go to www.hertracker.com. We have versions for iPhone, iPad, Android, and even a web version you can load up on your computer, which comes with SMS text alerts as well as in-depth email updates. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll have another video update sometime tomorrow. Thank you.